The economy is America's greatest strength. In a recent poll by the Wall Street Journal and NBC News, 2/3 of the American people said that we are either in a recession or headed toward one. Do you agree with that? And as president, what will you do to ensure economic vibrancy in this country?
I think there is no reason to believe that we're headed for a recession. We're enjoying 22 quarters of successive economic growth that started 2001 and then further in 2003 with the tax cuts that we put in place. We're enjoying low inflation. We're enjoying low unemployment. The stock market seems to be doing pretty well. I see no reason to believe we're headed for an economic downturn. As far as the economic prosperity of the future is concerned, I think it's a different story. I think if you look at the short term, it's rosy. I think if you look at a 10-year projection, it's rosy. But we are spending money we do not have. We're on a mandatory spending lockdown that is pushing us in a direction that is unsustainable. We're spending the money of future generations and those yet to be born. That has to do with our mandatory spending problem. Everyone knows that we have to address that. And it's the fundamental and foremost challenge, I think, facing our country economically.
Senator, you painted a very nice picture. The Dow and the S&P 500 today at new highs tonight, record numbers. And yet, 2/3 of the people surveyed said we are either in a recession or headed for one. Why the angst?
Well, I think there are pockets in the economy, certainly, that are having difficulty. I think there's certainly those in Michigan that are having difficulty. I think you always find that in a vibrant, dynamic economy. I think that not enough has been done to tell what some call the greatest story never told, and that is that we are enjoying a period of growth right now, and we should acknowledge what got us there and continue those same policies on into the future. Free and fair trade has been good for America. They're responsible for millions of jobs in this country. We cannot turn our back on that. I was one of the strictest advocates of imposing restrictions on the Chinese for their behavior in terms of exporting dangerous materials to other countries and tying some of our trade policies to what they did in that regard. They have still not done enough. They have devalued their currency, which puts them in a favored position as far as our manufacturers are concerned. But in terms of turning our back on free trade, that's not the direction to go in. It's meant too much for our country, and every country in the history of the world that's ever turned its back on free trade has suffered for it as a consequence. Well, in a dynamic economy, there are jobs lost and there are jobs gained, and so far there have been more jobs gained. And to put up barriers and say that so-and-so cannot lose a job would be the wrong thing to do in a free market economy. It's been so well for us. It's made us the most prosperous nation in the history of the world. But there's some things that you can recognize about the manufacturing industry and how important it is to us, and how we can do something for the industry to help them hire more people and keep the wheels rolling. Government policies in terms of taxing and spending and regulation. The manufacturing industry is in large part an international industry nowadays, which means prices are set internationally. Manufacturers cannot do much about that, but they get hit with costs domestically. We can do a lot about their costs in terms of taxes and regulation. We have the second highest corporate tax penalty in the world. We need to do better than that. We need to open up foreign markets. A lot of them are closing their markets to our people. Our people are not afraid to compete if the markets are open and the currency is not devalued. The answer is yes. Dubai would own 20% of NASDAQ, but NASDAQ under this deal, as I understand it, would gain more than 30% of the Dubai company. It all depends on national security issues. Doesn't seem to be one there. But we should look at all these deals carefully because we have a vast infrastructure. The great portion of it is in private hands. There's no way, frankly, that we can protect it all. So we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we're doing all that we can to protect the infrastructure we've got and scrutinize these deals, number one, first and foremost, from a national security standpoint. Well, in the first place, I don't buy the concept that any reduction in taxes is lost revenue to the government. The taxpayers haven't lost it. It's in their pocket. They know exactly where to find it. We shouldn't confuse the wealth of government with the wealth of nations. Just because the money is sent to Washington doesn't mean that the people are any richer. In fact, just the opposite is the case. As you pointed out, the AMT was designed to target the rich guy. And when the Democrats start targeting the rich guy, if you're a middle-class guy, you ought to run to the other side of the house because you're going to get hit. They're not going to be on target. And this is another one of those cases. As you point out, we're going from about 4 million people covered now to over 20 million people. What we're going to have to do, though, is look at this as a part of a total picture. Generally speaking, lower taxes and lower tax rates grow the economy. It's been proven in the 20s. It was proven during the Kennedy administration, proven during the Reagan administration, and again during this administration. I would apply that same principle to the AMT. It ought to be phased out. I think the responsible thing to do, though, until we get a handle on our mandatory spending side of the ledger, is to index it for inflation and fix it for another year while we look at the budget in total.
Thank you, Senator.
I think the policy we're engaged in now is the right one. Clearly, to me, we didn't go in with enough troops and we didn't know what to expect when we got there. But now we're showing signs of progress. I think we've got to take advantage of the opportunities that we have there. Now that we see a window of opportunity for things to turn around and us to stabilize that place and not have to leave with our tail between our legs. If we did that, it would make for a more dangerous United States of America. I think we've got to come to terms with the nature of the threat that our country faces. It is a global war. Islamic fascism has declared it upon us. They look at it as something that's been going on for a long, long time. They're perfectly willing for it to go on for a long time more, killing millions of innocent people in the process. They play by no rules, and they are intent on bringing down Western civilization and the United States of America. So we have to understand what's necessary and the determination that we need to show to friend and foe alike that we'll do what's necessary to fight on any front that we have to fight on. This is a front in a much broader war. And I think the young people that I talk to coming back from there understand that. In fact, sometimes it's strange to me to think that the average 20-year-old serving us in Iraq knows more about what it takes for our national security than the average 20-year veteran on Capitol Hill. Yes, I think John has it right. I would add that under the War Powers Act, there's always a conflict between the Congress and the President as to the exact applicability of that when an engagement lasts for a particular period of time and when they must come before Congress. I don't think anybody running for president should diminish the powers of the office before he gets there and take side in a hypothetical dispute. But I would say that in any close call, you should go to Congress, whether it's legally required or not, because you're going to need the American people. And Congress will help you if they're voting for it or they support it, or leaders, especially in the opposite party, are convinced and looking at the evidence that this is the right thing to do. That will help you with the American people. And we have learned that over the long term in any conflict, we've got to have the strong support of the American people over a protracted period of time.